Hello and welcome to the Level Up Lounge. I'm John Richardson. I'm joined today with my co-host, as always, Dwayne Wilson-Clark. And we've got a show for you today that we think you're going to find really interesting. A journey through working with AAA Studios on one of the, safe to say, one of the sort of greatest titles of its time. And today we're joined by Cameron Small, co-founder of Small Impact Games and former character artist at Rocksteady Studios.
Yeah, quite a mouthful, but yes, all correct.
These introductions get me every single time. I'm gasping by the end of them, but no. So for anyone obviously tuning in, joining us today, I think it's safe to say, obviously, Rocksteady Studios, part of the Warner Brothers Discovery Group, the guys behind the Arkham trilogy, and more recently, Justice League Killed the Suicide Squad.
Correct,
I think I've got that right.
So
Cam, thank you very much for joining us today. We've been looking forward to having you on the show and understanding more about your journey.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, I always want to talk about the kind of crazy, kind of mysterious, journey that people have into AAA, because I know it can be a big mystery for a lot of people, especially when you think you're working at home doing art and like, am I going to be able to make a video game one day? So, I'd love to cover that kind of like what that journey means for a lot of people and, see if we can get more people in the industry too, which is always a big plus.
Perfect. So obviously today we want to talk about that journey in a little bit more detail, understand where it started, where it got to, and obviously to where you are now as well. So your career began sort of back around sort of 2011 or so, I believe, and you worked for Headstrong Games.
Correct.
And you went straight in on a AAA title, which, looking at people's backgrounds, that's quite rare in a way to sort of fall into working on something that's quite large scale. So keen to understand how that came about, and what it was like sort of jumping in at the deep end. I
was very lucky because I jumped in when the industry started to shift. Specialization became a thing. So, for instance, AAA games had like, oh, this guy would make the characters, this person would do the animations. Before that, it was like multi-skilled kind of skill set, like spread across. And I was really into sculpting monsters. And that was a real specialty I did early. And I went to sculpting school in college, and I did that at university, doing all these monsters. And obviously House of Dead, played that non-stop as a kid in the arcade, right? So those things, to me, gelled well. So, the budget wasn't very big. Back in those days, especially in the Nintendo Wii and all that, the kind of shooting games where you have an actual gun, the light gun we call it, the budgets are very limited. So they weren't looking for like these really expensive experienced artists. So I was like, well, I'm hungry, I'm ready to go. I'm young. I'll take whatever salary I want to get my foot in the door. And just so happened to be actually a really great title. And the team was less than 20. We're talking small here. On a PS3 game, the PlayStation Move, I don't remember that. They're trying to push that out, so we were trying to be like a launch PlayStation Move title, and we're porting a Nintendo Wii game over to the PlayStation. We had to redo everything, next generation graphics at the time.
Yeah.
PlayStation 3 next generation graphics, showing my age again a little bit there. But yeah, so like, but I was the only character artist, so extremely scary stuff, and they had an audio guy, they used the only audio guy, first time for specialization in that studio. So no one really knew how to do things. We're like, we just have to make it look good. And it was a good year and a half of just like, pumping these zombies out, these boss guys.
I was going to say, how many characters were you responsible for?
Probably over about 50 or so. We had reusing parts, try to be clever with how we modeled the stuff, how we created the systems. But I had a great, mentors, Mark Slayer, Terry Kenny, who were very experienced in the engine and knew how to animate the characters and this kind of stuff. And they had worked on the previous one, so we were kind of set for the pipelines. But it was a lot to, for a 19, 20-year-old to manage, but I'm glad I did it because it was deep end stuff. And, as long as you're willing to learn, which is number one thing in this industry. People say they know how to make a good game every time, and normally lying. You're always having to learn new things, that kind of stuff. So, so that was a big first step, and a lot of trust from Headstrong Games for someone like me, coming in and doing that. So it was an amazing experience, to say the least, yeah.
Perfect. And obviously you spent a few years there, and that journey then took you on to Rocksteady, where you got to work on the final installment of their Batman title, which was obviously Arkham Knight. Now, Arkham Knight got huge plaudits when it was released. I think it was best visuals at the Golden Joystick Awards. The voice characters that they obviously had Mark Hamill as the Joker and
Kevin Conroy
as Batman. What was it like going into a studio such as that, being able to work on such an iconic IP? Now, I'm a huge Batman fan. He's like my go-to superhero. Like, if you ask me, Batman, anything down to even Lego Batman. So it's like, what was it like going in and being able to create something like that?
So I thought House of Dead was big. So, to even get a higher kind of ceiling is kind of crazy. When I first, there was a little bit of a sneaky route I got into that company. I got picked up by a kind of freelance house who specialize in characters, and I got basically acquired through Headstrong sorting me out because the project was over and the people were kind of going their own way. I got picked up by a mentor, a guy called Etienne Jabeur, really talented character artist, and he was ex-Headstrong, so he kind of picked me up. And he kind of like introduced me to all these like really AAA projects, like really high end. Working for Supermassive Until Dawn, Guerrilla Games and Killzone Shadowfall, like touching these amazing, like Son of Rise of Rome for Crytek, all these amazing, we're art testing for all these like high profile things. But the main project they got was Batman, and that was the big thing. We're like, oh, I really want that project. But so I started off as a bit of a contractor for them. And they kind of liked my work as like, oh, do you want to come in-house? I was like, absolutely. So that's why I became a full-time character artist and internally within Warner Brothers, Rocksteady. First things first, obviously everyone's a Batman fan, as you said. Like, you cannot say you don't like the movies or whatever. I had a bit of a traditional kind of introduction, movies first, well, cartoon movies first, and then the comics. So I kind of came through that way. The first film I watched was like Batman or Robin, the George Clooney nipple suit. Yeah. With Uma Thurman, Poison Ivy. Can't forget that. And obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze. Yeah. So that dug in that's been in my, cool off. All that stuff has been dug in my brain, so I'm also a big fan. So I super respected the material going in. And that's what the studio's about. They really love the Batman material. That's just like all the designers and writers, they're always got comic books open, they're checking things, this kind of stuff. So yeah, that was like, it was definitely scary. Not gonna lie, I didn't walk in there all cocky. I was like, oh, this is one hell of a thing. But my first job was working on Two-Face thugs, like his gang.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like scarred masks and a little bit monstery. So I was like, okay, man, there's a little bit of specialty here. I can feel a little bit comfortable. So I did these kind of like crazy masks and all that kind of stuff. And I managed to finish ahead of time. So it made me feel a bit relaxed. Like, oh, good job, you done. Did that with 6-8 weeks or so. And then they started giving me these bigger tasks and bigger roles to kind of tackle. The Riddler mech. Don't know if you guys remember the Riddler mech boss, but it's quite a hard boss to get. But huge, massive mech the Riddler controls. And that was probably the most complex I ever worked on. So the biggest thing about Rocksteady is actually the Unreal Engine. They've been using it forever. And I started to like, through these complexities of game development, I learned the engine and got really into it. The shader work and those kind of stuff, VFX to go along with the character. So you're not just a character artist, you kind of a little bit of everything. The character touches everything. Because it's a character-led game. Everything's about the character story and development. It's in the cinematics, it's the gameplay, you hit a guy, it causes blood, this kind of stuff. So I really like it's a crash course in everything character specialization kind of process. But leading on to Mr. Freeze was working on that character. That was
kind of like the pinnacle for you.
Yeah. Because I mean, a lot of people, be like Arnold Schwarzenegger's version of Mr. Freeze is controversial, maybe to say the least.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I watched it when I was 10. I was like, of course I love it. This is the coolest thing ever. I'm a big Arnie fan as well. So I was like, it's all in the back of my head. I was like, I love that character, and in the comics, I love him. The Arkham City version of Mr. Freeze was just so iconic. So yeah, that was the big, that's when I said, oh man, I'm responsible for something serious here. And I had 12 weeks just to be left alone with Mr. Freeze and get it to like a certain spot. And that was actually ended up being the last thing I did. So it was a crescendo of 2.5 years all the way up to that character. But yeah, that was probably the biggest moment for me at Rocksteady is Mr. Freeze. And I just love that character. I think he's absolute badass. No matter what.
So I'm going to have a question completely, it's not off topic, but slightly off topic. You mentioned obviously Clooney and stuff when you were 10. Who's your Batman?
I like Burton's Batman, but tough one. I like Nolan too, so
yeah.
I'm probably going to have to give it to Christian Bale, but again, I do like the new Batman too. Pattinson, I do like Pattinson too.
I think they're all really
I like
good.
the dark. Yeah, it's hard to mess up. I think.
I really like Batman Forever as a film. I think there's something about it. It's just
the pace is good. The pace is perfect.
Film,
yeah. I know. Yeah, I love them all. I mean, like Keaton's cool. He's like dark, moody, kind of like. I like that Bruce Wayne. I like Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne. I like them all. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it's technically the Arkham version of Batman, though. But
I'm Bale all day.
Yeah,
long.
Bale's.
It's Batman. Batman Begins. Dark Knight.
Is epic. It's
Rises is good.
Yeah.
It finishes it nicely, but those first two, I think Batman Begins don't get enough credit for the way they told that journey.
Liam Neeson.
Great.
Come on.
Awesome.
What a villain. The caliber of acting, that was the first time I think you started seeing superhero movies going like, wow, this is serious.
Epic.
And that was the same time the game was coming as well, so we were like, oh god, we had
no pressure.
I think the film that actually was coming out the same year was Batman versus Superman.
Okay.
And there was a bit of an internal battle at Warner about who could make the coolest cape. it's just a thing that's been going on forever, like the cape design, how it falls on the characters.
Yeah.
It's like this unseen appreciation behind all the artists behind it.
Interesting.
And I remember like Zack Snyder's kind of like emails coming across like, oh, my cape's the best, and he's showing off. It's pretty good. I gotta give it to him. But I like to think us, the Arkham team, did a great job in the old cape angle because it's all you see.
Yeah, just that gliding down.
You know, I had to spend weeks on the wind effect and then the cape and how the water goes down the side of it. How I help with the team there, like Pablo and Albert. So yeah, the cape thing is always, that's the thing that really like the true fans notice. So you have to be really careful how it, you know, especially the helmet when it goes around. There's always a joke I can't turn my head.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff. You know.
What's the team culture like within like working on and like, the pressure working on a game like that?
So yeah, I left before Suicide Squad started. So you know, I can't say that how it is now, but you know, I think 8 years ago now it would be. Back then it was, the camaraderie was high. Everyone loved Batman. Even if you didn't like Batman, you came in the studio, you became a massive fan. And it's interesting because the marketing team is internally as well.
Yeah.
A lot of traditionally you have the publishers quite separate and all this kind of stuff, but they're all kind of internally. So the buzz of like wanting to show cool stuff is within the studio. Like everyone's like, oh, what do you think of this? And I actually kind of fell into I found the culture quite cool because you can kind of like get adopted by other teams naturally because you're passionate about the project. And I actually fell into the marketing circuit just because I like to show the characters off, and I became part of the marketing team for a bit. I'd go to the E3, show off to journalists. So that's how cool the culture is. If you're passionate and you want to push things, you know, they'll open that door for you at Rocksteady and like, oh, maybe you want to try a bit of this. A lot of the designers come from QA.
Yeah.
Because they just love the combat. They want to, I want to get into what it means to make that. So that kind of route is open up for you, the culture.
Because we worked with Warner Brothers. We did some work with TT
on
Games
Lego,
and Lego.
Yeah.
And the passion is there. Those guys working on those products and the franchise, so passionate about it.
You can hear the enthusiasm when
they've been there for 20 years, 25 years. Like, these people don't leave. Like, they've got that passion for it and they stay with it. And I think that's one thing that the studios under the Warner Brothers Discovery sort of banner do, is the people working it have that passion for the IPs that they're working on. And you have to have that if you want to create it in the best light possible.
Yeah. The TT guys are the ones like when we did the E3 circuit, they do it as well because obviously we're in the same house of company. They're the ones that are like, wow, they're definitely matching our level of, absolute respect to that team. Incredible. And they got such a library catalogue of stuff and everything's always great. Man, they shift a lot of units every time. They bang them out, do a really great job. So much props to that team. But you know, the E3 circuit is interesting because it's a little bit, I would probably say it's becoming maybe a controversial thing now. But back in those days, like going around showing journalists the best possible experience, having everything themed Batman, and they're in like a Batman cave playing a Batman game. Yeah, it's like you're trying to sell the product as best as possible. I think as games are getting nowadays, it's like you're kind of like don't know about bribing. Like you've seen as bribing nowadays, but back in those, that's super normal. E3 was all about grand scale, having the best possible experience.
Who's got the best booth?
And I love doing it. I love showing people like. But when I was a kid, if you could play a game 2 months early, you'd freak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was. So that's what E3 was about. It was about showing games early, behind closed doors, explaining the premise and getting people pumped. And I loved doing that part as well. So
I don't think demos are such a big thing nowadays. Like it used to be.
Yeah, they used to be like normal.
You used to get the disc, or even after that, you could download the demo and you'd get to play it, and it'd be
certain racetracks or certain things of the game that you can do.
And I don't think that's really a thing nowadays.
Yeah.
Like you get a beta release maybe, but actual demos of games,
or pay to get it.
You can pay to get like 10 hours access or something, but that anticipation and excitement that a demo or a showcase or that early access can create, I don't think it's utilised enough.
I think the indies are the ones that are picking up. I think there's a bit of a cycle going on. The indies are now falling through that AA, AAA route of the 2010 era, or pre-2010. Like the indies are starting to fall that way, and the other ones that are trying to push demos and get wish lists and all this kind of stuff. But the AAA are getting more and more secretive, more and more like private beta access, those kind of stuff. Because obviously you put a lot of money on Red.
Yeah.
You don't want anything to mess that up, and the budgets are getting bigger. The gamble technically is getting higher. So I can see why the demo thing is a bit like, that could be units that we're not shifting.
Yeah.
So they're looking at ways to like, maybe sell the demo. Well, that's a private beta access. So I can see like, it's the money machines kind of pushing that forward where giving stuff for free is a little bit risky. Which again, I come understand. You can get games are getting crazy in cost nowadays. So that's unfortunately the death of the demo. In the AAA space, at least. Yeah. But the indies, they're carrying that mantle. They love the demos and the wishlist building. So free publicity.
Have you seen the Arkham or the Batman sort of the VR
Yeah.
I've
Arkham Shadow.
seen the trailers of it. I've seen people with the
genuinely
headset
makes
on
me wanna
throwing
get a,
hooks
Oculus.
and stuff, and you obviously can use the gadgets by touching certain aspects, etc. What's your thoughts on that?
So actually, the last thing I did at Rocksteady was working on the PS4 version of Batman VR. We actually did a VR game already. And it did all right. It did okay. It was
think
the
I own
PlayStation
that.
VR. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people did buy it actually,
Yeah.
and it was a similar experience. We had a really cool bit where you play the piano. If you do it the correct way, Alfred would open up the Batcave. That was a bit that sticks in my mind. But so I kind of see it as a bit of a testament to that. Like, it's trying to do that again. VR market itself, I'm not sure. I've tried to get into it, and the problem is I've got motion sickness. And when you develop VR games, you normally got the headset on quite a lot because you're testing the environments and all that.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
So I can't really. I've never really
Connected with it.
It's just not. I don't vibe with it. I just can't. So obviously an Arkham VR game, I'm sure it will sell great, but for me, it's like I just like a good old third-person action game. So my motion sickness level is low. But yeah, it looks great. I love the ideas. Ratcatcher, I think, is the main villain, which got a little bit of a nod in the Suicide Squad movie with the daughter, I believe. So that whole lore.
Okay.
So there's some cool stuff like that's not been explored in the game space. So I'm excited about the lore, and I'll probably definitely watch gameplay of it, and I'll pick it up just to see the little secrets and nuggets and stuff in there. But for the gameplay wise, VR is not really my thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
When you left Rocksteady to obviously go on to Small Impact Games, were there any lessons that you could kind of take from Rocksteady and obviously apply them to your own company?
So many. Unreal Engine being that capable as a product, like as an engine, allows you to create such ambitious stuff as a smaller team. Because Rocksteady at the time, like 100 people sounds like a lot, but that traditionally is quite small.
Yeah.
Doing such a massive product like that, like an Arkham series, is a big title. And I kind of picked up, you're capable of doing some ambitious stuff with this engine, because it takes care of a lot of things for you. Rendering, programming, all this kind of stuff. So I was thinking, you can make big games as a smaller team. So the VFX stuff, all that, tons of stuff I brought over. I wouldn't be the developer I'm today without Rocksteady. That's definitely, I'm confident with that. But it made me double down on the knowledge of Unreal Engine, for sure. Yeah.
And how did you find the transition from working on AAAs? Because obviously you had your previous role, then you Rocksteady, and going into creating kind of something more sort of indie development somewhat. How was that transition for you? How did you find that?
I couldn't help but feel that marketing is so pivotal that going to indie space, I found that a bit of a shock because there isn't any. Marketing in the indie space is pretty limited. So you normally go out looking for publishers to compensate for that. For instance, like the last coolest thing I think I saw at Rocksteady is they actually built the Batmobile physically.
Yeah.
West Coast Customs, remember that? Pimp My Ride?
Yes, I love that
Great show. I couldn't stop watching it. But they had such a good idea where they make it on the show. It almost fund how it's built, and a private collector will probably buy it because it's like the Batmobile. I think that ended up happening. So it's a fulfilling prophecy where it got paid for before it even got made. I was like, that's some great marketing. I was like, I need to carry that into the indie world. I think that's really key. That became a shock because there's no money for that when you're an indie team. You have to figure out yourself. So I actually fell into making trailers for my own games to try and compensate. It was nowhere near having a physical real Batman at E3, Batmobile in E3, but it was, I got to the point where I was using Unreal Engine, the matinee systems, cinematic systems, to all in-game kind of cinematic stuff. But I ended up having to kind of do that myself, and that was a bit of a shocker, going from a team of 20 doing it to like on my own. So it's more of like trying to reach the same ambition without the funding of the team size is the biggest difference. Because you don't want to go smaller, really.
Yeah, once you've been kind of doing that, you want to stay to that
tough.
level.
Like working at Warner Bros. It's like, that's like, you want to try and hit that kind of, that scene again. And then I've never got back to that scale again. That's insane. Batman is the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I think having the drive to try is important. And I've always kept that as an indie developer, just trying to swing at the God and see if he bleeds type thing, that type of thing. That's probably the biggest thing is the marketing stuff. Like, making the game, that's very difficult. I'm not putting that down, but getting seen, there's so many indie games. I think it's something like 800 games a day in Steam come out.
Wow.
So if you
There's
want
a lot. It's big. Yeah. The amount of games there are to kind of have an impact in that.
Yeah. Important. So that, obviously there's hidden gems. Sure. There's definitely hidden gems that could have had marketing that done well. And if a game is good, it will probably get noticed. but you have to do something about getting seen. You can't just go out in the Steam store and, pray that it gets seen.
That's a good point.
Your storefront has to be tight. Your trailers have to be good. Your screenshots have to be nice. Your storefront, nice gifts, all this kind of stuff. And now it's all about wish lists as well, building those wish lists before you even consider coming out to a certain level. All that sort of stuff is, I think, AAA habit going into indie, and I think it helps somewhat.
Do you feel that's how your role evolved so much? Because obviously you mentioned being involved in the marketing with Rocksteady, then going and having your sort of own studio, and did that exposure to going to the E3 and understanding what people wanted to see, how they wanted to engage, allow you to help promote what you were doing in your studio?
Yeah, because absolutely, because especially as a character artist, you obviously want your characters to be seen. We're commercial artists. We're shallow. We want to do what do you think is a cool thing? We can't do the actual real artist thing of like being in a basement painting something and then dying, suffering, and then people pick you up. That's not my sort of thing. I want to be seen. So that's kind of definitely a habit that's kind of pushed from AAA, and I do like that. But obviously we're making the game too, so there's not a lot of time. So it's all about Rocksteady. I had time to do help with the marketing and time to develop. In indie, you don't have any time, so it's going to be in your own time. After hours, that kind of stuff. So I think that definitely helped. But the trailer stuff is you're still kind of thrown out to YouTube and hope. Again, publishers help a lot with that. Our first game, again, made a game called The Black Death before. Marauders was like a learning kind of experience, like Unreal Engine multiplayer. And we would just make these trailers and just throw out there and just hoping they'll get 16K views, just little tidbits here or there. And it's kind of a little bit, but what Rocksteady really truly made was the true education from Rocksteady was timing. It's all timing. You want to hit the trailer 1 month prior. Those teaser trailers, that rhythm you always feel with games. There's actually a magic to that really works.
Yeah.
Staying in people's psyche and creating.
Don't let them forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then don't show too much too early. I know people get annoyed, where's the gameplay trailer?
Well, that's the annoying. I watch trailers and it's not in-game footage, and I'm I want to know what it's going to look like, and that looks fantastic.
But that feeling I want to see what it looks like, you will.
Yeah.
It'll be in a month.
When I've spent my money on it.
Yeah. We'll get a gameplay trailer and then you'll be like, okay, and then so that's kind of it's almost annoying people on purpose.
Yeah.
It's I want to see things.
Teasing them enough.
At least you're thinking about it. You're remembering all this stuff is there's a science to it. And I find I get frustrated too. You're gonna be wrong. I'm like, where's the real gameplay? I'll fall for my own traps. But so that's definitely something that a massive lesson going into indie.
What's the difference between obviously launching your own game and doing it at Rocksteady?
Anxiety times 1,000, I think, is probably when you're in the AAA space.
Personal.
Yeah, when you're in AAA space and they're like, oh, we've gone gold and the final disc is made, you're like, woo, when you go to do a party. Indie, you're staring at Steam and you're looking at the Steam charts and you're pressing, your hands are shaking over the launch button. You're physically having to launch that game yourself.
Yeah.
And put it out there and you're just looking at the servers, make sure they're okay. This is stuff, again, a team of 100 would be doing. You're just checking everything. Oh, okay, server people are joining, the matchmaking's working, this kind of stuff. So you don't get to enjoy the launch. That's the difference.
It's just stress.
Honestly, you just don't. If it's a single player game, there's probably some enjoyment for sure. But for multiplayer, indie, you definitely don't get to enjoy
There's too much that could go wrong with multiplayer.
Yeah, I got 20 people. I'll hire people as an indie developer just to watch forums, Discord.
I was just about to say, how are you getting that information back? How do you get the feedback mostly?
Yeah, you need a community manager. Sit there watching, tell me the errors straight away. And we're a small team of under 10 people, all just talking to these people, fetching information, giving us bugs, and we need to get hot fix out. So again, that's the biggest difference. Rocksteady, game's out, get to read reviews. Oh, that's nice, yeah. And then, but indie is just reviews aren't even considered. You're just worried about the end user, making sure you can, the player can get in the game and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You become a customer service expert all of a sudden. So that's definitely the biggest difference.
And speaking of reviews, I actually did notice that the Arkham got 9.2 on IGN. Now, IGN don't give good reviews for anything. They're a lot. People laugh at IGN nowadays because everything's a 7. 7's their highest, and it could be a masterpiece, and they'll go 7 that. And I looked back today to go, what did that actually come out with a review? And 9.2, which
the launch was somewhat controversial. I remember because the Batmobile was ill received by a lot of people because they were used to the what we call predator combat, where you're on top of the enemy and you're scouting them and you're taking them down. That classic Arkham City combat and the Arkham Asylum combat. We started to reduce that down a little bit and had more car stuff, and people got quite like, no, I want to go back to the stealth combat. But it's actually aged like fine wine a little bit, because originally the Steam reviews, I mean, sure there was tech issues, but the original Steam reviews I remember was like 6 out of 10 when we came out. Now it's like 98% or something. It's like it's just, as we solved the problems, people got to appreciate the Batmobile a bit more. So I think now it is a proper strong cult classic, and people would even debate whether they like it more than City now, where before it was never a debate.
Yeah.
Now they're like, I think it actually might be better. So I think it might have been maybe too ahead of our time, maybe, and now it's got to settle and maybe be one of the strongest in the franchise. Where before it was just like, no, Asylum's best. Which, I get it. But
everyone's got their personal preference.
Yeah. I'm biased because I worked at Night, obviously, and I knew when I was working, I was like, people are going to love this. Just because of all the little secrets and so much effort, and it's like 100 Riddler trophies and 50 of these achievements and all this kind of stuff. I really went to town on what I call the Rocksteady polish. Yeah. Which when they finish the game, they go, okay, now we begin. Now we add all this Easter egg type gameplay. So yeah, I mean, so the reviews now hopefully are actually reflective of how I feel, which is a 9.2 out of 10. Take that.
I'll take that. Can you tell us more about your own game, Marauders? What's
So
premise there?
Yeah, so I'm actually really into extraction shooters. And my first game as an indie developer, Black Death, was technically an extraction game, but it just didn't have a name for the genre. We just made one by accident. So we knew there was something there about going into an unknown danger and having to get out safely. That we knew that was a thing. It was a medieval game about how the plague was actually turning people into zombies, a little bit of a twist. And you had to go in, and there's a game called Blight Survival that's been announced that has basically that times 10. They've nailed it. We did a bad job. They did a great job. So Marauders was basically that. Tarkov came out in 2015. Couldn't stop playing it. Got 1,000 hours in it. Couldn't stop. I thought, this thing's magic. Whatever this formula is, I love it. And I was just playing them all. Vigor on Xbox One, I think it was, and all these kind of extraction games. I was like, I think this is the next thing. And with indie developers, you don't know whether your game's going to sell. So all you can really do is make a game that you'd play. That's the only thing you can really trust, and hope there's thousands of people who feel the same way. So I was like, okay, that's what Marauders is. This is an attempt at what we think extraction shooter could be. And yeah, sure, I played Tarkov very early, so I was kind of very raw to the genre. It's exploding now. Everyone's giving it.
I was going to say, it's something now that you've got Exaborn and you've got all these others that everyone's on that bandwagon. It's almost like it's the new Battle Royale.
Yeah, I mean, people keep saying that. I have kind of controversial opinion on it. I don't think it'll ever be a next Battle Royale.
You can give it to us.
Yeah. I don't think it'll ever be one next Battle Royale, because people forget how big what Battle Royale was.
Yeah.
PUBG had 3.2 million concurrent users on launch. That's better than Wukong. Wukong smashing it.
Yeah, I still feel like it's 10. I think someone told me the other day it's 10 million a day just in the region or mobile playing PUBG.
Yeah,
so it's still massive.
It's huge. So I'm not saying extraction shooters aren't big. They're big. They're their own thing. But to hit that sort of scene, that's crazy. I don't think anyone can. So I love extraction games, but I'm also, I think, semi-realistic in the fact I don't think it'll ever be the £10 billion business, but it'll be a comfortable $1 billion business. But what's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Just don't spend too much, maybe, is what I'm saying. And Tarkov is the king and will always be, probably, for the near future. That is the top one, where PUBG had then Apex and then Fortnite, and then they had like crescendo of titles beating each other. So when someone says the next Battle Royale, that's the requirement. You have to have 3.2 million concurrent and then be the less played one. Fortnite beat that, and then Apex was so that's the kind of, I think it's too much of a task to trying to hit that. So.
Like the next Messi or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you can't be the next Messi.
No,
so
I get what you mean.
It's just unfair pressure.
Yeah.
So but we're having a lot more ones coming out, and I'd love to be proven wrong because I'm in the genre. But yeah, I just think it's too much of a task. And obviously I think people should be realistic with their production costs. But I would love to be proven wrong. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love to be proven wrong. But yeah, anyway, so Marauders is our attempt at that. We started developing 2020, just before COVID, a few months before COVID, when games became the biggest industry ever and beat film. I remember that. Because film was the king, right, for a cinema, and then COVID came, was like, actually games is king, because obviously everyone's at home playing video games, obvious. this is the hottest market, and I remember lots of investment going around all this stuff. We didn't really take any. We're like, we're just going to make this in our own kind of dime. We got picked up by Team 17. Very lucky. It's one of the best indie publishers, definitely in Britain.
Yeah.
Number one. And they kind of like funded a good like year and a half of, and then we kind of broke even on pre-orders on the alpha.
Wow.
Which is like, even Team 17 were like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, holy hell, that's a good job. So we're like, okay, there's something to this, and we kind of iterated through some betas. Again, we still always remained a team of 10 or less. We never really grew. Which, you know, maybe that was the wrong thing to do. I don't know. We could question that. Maybe we should have grown when we knew, because we hit 1 million views on one of our trailers. Like, oh, maybe this is getting kind of big. And then 3 million views on a TikTok. And it's like, oh god, this is exploding. But all we did was like, no, let's just use that as an excuse to polish and do more betas. We ended up doing like 8 technical tests and all this kind of stuff. We really refined the kind of matchmaking multiplayer kind of process. But Marauders is just it's a labour of love. Have you seen the Astartes Warhammer shorts?
No.
Maybe the viewers will know. It's a fan-made Warhammer 40k cinematic. Guy just made it on his own dime, and it's incredible that he actually got picked up officially by the Warhammer license. But the whole sequence is no dialogue, and it's just these Space Marines just breaching a ship with a breacher pod. I was like, that's the coolest mechanic in the game I think ever. That could be so cool if it was in a game where you can just float around space and pierce someone's hull, end inside someone's ship, kill everyone, and take the ship. You know, I thought, oh, space piracy. And then I was like, okay, well, extraction games is about stealing each other's loot. Space piracy, those things married together could be solid design. And, you know, obviously that's a little bit of discussion with me and my other co-founders, you know, my brother and James. I'm thinking, oh, this could definitely work. You know, flying around, stealing other people's ships. You know, like Sea of Thieves in space, but you're actually, you know, piercing through the hull in a little ship.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, there's something there. And obviously, like, building and designing guns is incredibly difficult. Things need to function. People
just see guns and think that's just a design and that's it.
And if it is just a design, the players won't enjoy it because it's not mechanically, you know, it's not exciting firing it. If it's all made up, it doesn't make sense. You're like, oh, this thing doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So we made the kind of executive decision to be like, okay, the game's set in the 90s and it's an alternate history.
Yeah.
We actually went to space after World War I. And so the guns are actually from the 90s, but they're in space. So the references we can use is opened up. We don't have to spend months designing what a gun does. We can just look at the real stuff. So, you know, we've got an Uzi in space. Yeah, exactly.
There's a gun in one of the Call of Duties. I think it was the World War Call of Duty. And it was, I can't remember the name of it. It was something like a psh or something like that. It had
PPSH 41.
Yeah, that's what I just called it when I was younger playing with it. And the mechanics of that were brilliant. It was just like a rapid fire. It felt aggressive and it felt quick. And that's when you talk about the mechanics of a gun that reminds you.
The feeling it gives you as well.
Yeah, stuff like the kickback on like an MP40, for instance, and how it like you can exactly like you don't think about it unless you do think about it of what those guns are actually like, and that's the joy and the passion that goes into them that a player then, whether it's Call of Duty or any other type of shooter, Battlefield, etc. is I want that gun because of X, Y, Z, and the feel of it, and you enjoy using that within the game.
And that's exactly it. And we try to capture the feeling of those guns. Like we've got those guns in there, you know, the MP44, the STG44, as you call it, or the PPSH or PSH 41.
As I call it.
Yeah, we got all those things like in the game, and we knew it didn't feel right until it had that grit that the Call of Duty games had back in those days, or the Battlefield. It's all real life references. It is unfortunately the secret of a lot of good games is reference. Yeah. And we actually partnered with like the Royal Armouries in Leeds. Jonathan Ferguson is an amazing armourer who does these really cool GameSpot videos. I don't know if you've seen him. He analyses the guns in certain games and all that. And I was like, I want to get partnered with these guys, and they got like, oh, this armory, try all the guns out, see what they're like. Not physically shoot them, but you know, see the operations. And we ended up turning into a marketing beat. We made videos of it with them and interviewing and all this kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun time, and you get to feel the weight of them. And held an MG42. Tried to do one hand, impossible. I can't step beyond game development. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger carrying the M, you know, or Rambo carrying the M60 in those movies. That's honestly, that is a feat. Without the ammo, it's difficult. With the ammo, it's doubling the weight of a gun. The ammo is double the weight of a gun. And those guys have got chains. So maybe they're props. I don't know. Maybe they're fooling us. But wow, the weight of it. So that's an interesting, like, you know, I love the research of the guns, and it made me respect weapons is a thing, and I've always liked FPS. It's not new to me, but that's what we wanted to do. Marauders a bit authentic. I think science fiction can be a little bit funny if you make up too much stuff and then you kind of lose that touch of reality.
Yeah.
You have like I'm not a laser gun guy. It's just not my.
You need to have some sort of anchor that's just like, this is not a base. This is where we don't cross the line.
Yeah, and like even Star Wars, like it has lasers in it, but the E11 is a Sterling Mark IV gun. They just changed some bits on it. So all the guns in Star Wars are real guns. They're just added laser effects. So I'm good with that. Adds that grounded reality to things. So like, that's called kit bashing, where they back in those days they would just like make props up because they had a budget like £12 to make the first Star Wars. So yeah, it's kind of like, so I think science fiction is a bit of risk where you just kind of lose the audience. And you want to bring it back with these kind of like grounded elements, and that was like having guns from the 80s or the World War II. You go into space and these spaceships that look like tanks because we based them on real tanks with wings, and like some of the ships are actually physically two Apaches just shoved together, and then we design a cockpit with it, and it just looks right. It has like grounded elements to it. So that's like kind of what Marauders is. It's a alternate history, but it's still science fiction. It's those things tied together. And obviously shooting someone and stealing a ship, you can't beat that feeling, I don't think. It's a strong feeling,
Perfect. No, it sounds really good. And obviously that came out about 2 years ago now. Right?
October 2 years ago. We launched into early access on Steam. We went way higher than we expected. We're looking for about 80,000 units. Like, we're a small team. We didn't need to. I was aiming low.
And what did you get to?
Over 500,000.
Wow,
that's impressive.
I think 600,000 odd something. That was like shocking, and because of that, we weren't quite ready for certain things. Some of the matchmaking systems collapsed a little bit. We had this issue with you can create squads right in these games, right? Everyone takes it for granted, but this thing is so technically crazy how this stuff works. Adding a friend and adding them to your squad, all that stuff. That system started to struggle a little bit because of influx of players. Again, good problem to have. Don't get me wrong, but that was the stress of the launch of the India, as I said earlier. So we probably should have maybe tested larger volume, but we didn't know we were going to get it. We thought we were going to be, just do early access and just steadily grow. Instead, it exploded on day one. And to be honest, that's, testament a little bit to Team 17. But I think also as the team, we kind of knew the market a little bit, and we kind of accidentally fell into a thing that we kind of knew. Everything down to I watch taco streamers all the time. When I'm working, I've got them on the side, I'll just see like a bit of gameplay because when I get time to play the game, I'll make sure I'm watching it. But they're the ones that end up picking it up because I think there's a bit of a symbiotic thing where I'm making a game for them. I'm watching them and I'm playing their games, and everyone in the studio is playing their games. And we didn't have to spend a penny on them. All these influencers playing it day one, and that just made it go explode. Like Jack Frags, all these really cool YouTubers that I love.
That's got to feel great. People that you watched playing other games, then playing yours.
Yeah.
That's got to be recognition in itself just there.
Yeah, like with Batman, it was a little bit different because the people playing it, they were massive, but weren't really in my genre of game.
Yeah.
Where Marauders, that was 100% my thing. I knew everyone who was playing it. That was a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, it's definitely cool. And them talking to me, and I was explaining the game to them, like, oh, it's this and that. And they're like, oh, cool. And they come back to me, oh, this is fun. And all this kind of stuff. So that was, that was amazing. Mind-blowing. That's when I start to enjoy it, as a week after. You look at the videos. Yeah.
So, that's really cool, and I'm glad that it was done so well, and the credit to you and the guys for being able to create that. Now, before we go on to kind of our more light-hearted segment of the show, given obviously your experience and where you've managed to get to it now, what would just be one small piece of advice you would give to anyone that wants to get into the industry?
I think the modding part of the internet is incredibly strong. There's some really talented people out there that are just doing it for purely fun, and you got to respect that. They're not doing it for any money. They're just like, I love being part of games. And the modding scene is something that's been around forever. It's not new. And a lot of people who are in AAA have come from the modding scene, including myself. I love this game called Red Orchestra, and my first kind of attempt at making a game was with a team called Rising Storm. It was a mod that became its own standalone project, so we kind of fell into that space. And I know so many people that have come that route as well. Like my, Quake 3, couldn't stop playing as a kid. Put my face on one of the character models. I didn't know that was I was texturing a character. I was learning the skill, but they just call it mods. Yeah. So for me, it's about do some modding. Get into it. Like, oh, you want to change how the character looks? Put your own face on Max Payne. Go for it. You're learning the process.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You'll even learn a bit of coding because you have to implement the mod. You'll experience the engine a little bit. You'll understand, like, oh, there's these kind of model formats. I need to import them. You'll start to see how everything kind of works under the hood. And you'll gain the skill set. Sure, I went to university. I'm not saying don't go to university or do go to university, but the modding thing and that, it was
the extracurricular part of just play around, familiarise yourself and surprise yourself on what you're actually able to do. And that helps you create a showcase of this is what I've done and this is what I can do. I would like the opportunity. Yeah.
And obviously the simple answer is like, oh, just make your own games. But that's a challenging, daunting thing. I'm just giving you one step, maybe closer to possibility where like just fiddle with someone else's game that they've already made and see how far you get. Especially, Skyrim and all of the mods in that. There's so many people that Bethesda picked up from the modding society, so modding community, I should say. So, I think that's a strong route.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So then moving on to yourself and wanting to understand where the love of gaming came from. So what was the first console that you ever owned?
So I was a hardcore PC player for a very long time, even since I was 9. So I was late into the console game. And it wasn't until I was playing MMOs, which is funny because I had Mario on the other week. I was playing all those games, EverQuest, Star Wars Galaxies, big into those, hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I was like, I ain't playing console. This is just, I'm an MMO and an FPS player. You can't play FPS on those joysticks. Are you kidding me? But then Dreamcast came around and they introduced MMOs on the console. It was full internet console in 1999. I think that's crazy.
There you go, Dwayne. That's the second person that's spoke highly of Dreamcast that you said was a flash in the pan.
I just didn't really.
It is.
For me, I don't really think it was a big. I don't remember it being a big console. I remember it's like something everybody remembers, but I don't think it was. Yeah, I stand behind.
Oh no! To defend you, it did fail commercially.
Yeah,
absolutely, it did fail, and that's probably because it was reaching out to an audience like me who was happy with PC gaming.
Yeah,
and obviously the arcade world was still strong. So I had a lot of arcade ports. People like, just go to the arcade and play that. It was probably trying to do too much, but it was a technical achievement. It had a modem in it. That stuff was crazy back then. You couldn't really get that. I was playing mouse and keyboard on a console and playing Phantasy Star Online and talking to players and all this kind of stuff. And I was playing Quake on it, Quake 3, multiplayer as well. And then I had this amazing VMU thing where you could take it out and have your little Sonic game on there. It was I was doing way too much probably. I had light guns, I was playing House of the Dead. So that was definitely my main kind of passion. It's being Sega as well. I remember playing Master System when I was younger and we had Mega Drives, but that was the Dreamcast was when I had like 100 games on it and all this kind of stuff. To the point now where I'm actually collecting the stuff. I still collect Dreamcast stuff today. The Japanese, there's a bunch of Japanese games never got ported. The console just died and then they still had games coming out for it because they were in production. So I've been trying to grab those, ones that never got to see the light of day. And there's plenty of awesome Japanese games that. There's even a From Software title on there. It has a lot of inspiration that inspired Armored Core and Elden Ring. Yeah. You can see the inspiration where they went from. It was mechanical giant knights, so they were robots and fantasy, and they merged it. It's called Frame Gird. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Frame Gird. And it was, you can. I played a 25-year-old From Software game on there, so it's it shows a testament to their legacy, how long they've been going for.
Yeah.
So definitely holds special place in my heart, and I'll still play it today. Yeah.
What was the? You might just answer this, but what was the first game that you really, really fell in love with?
So people, I played loads of games, but the thing that made me go like, whoa, I couldn't stop getting enough of it. It's probably Max Payne.
Interesting.
I loved Max Payne.
I couldn't stop playing it.
The slow-mo parts of it, I thought it was fantastic.
The first one, I probably could play like 30 times.
Wow.
And with the mods, I was getting the mod, and then it got me into the modding, just customize it, want to replay it.
Yeah.
It was like difficult, but it was like accessible at the same time. It was just that perfect like middle.
It had the element of darkness to it as well. I thought that was just there weren't a huge amount of games with that type of depth at that point. And I loved it when I was playing it.
And Matrix just came out.
Yeah, so that's whole slow-mo driving around the walls.
And I was big into Hong Kong cinema as well back in those days, like Chow Yun-Fat's movies. Hard Boiled, all this kind of stuff. Like they had all the motifs from that, the doves in slow motion, all 2 pistols, all that kind of stuff. Like I was obsessed with that and obsessed with that stuff. So Max Payne came, it just hit something in my psyche. It's like perfect. Sure, I loved Half-Life. I loved all these games. I loved Doom, Quake, but that was just like wow.
Doom was awesome.
Yeah, Doom was great.
Doom 2, yeah.
I got a Quake 3 tattoo on me, but so I'd say I'll have to give it to Max Payne, but second love is probably Quake 3. Yeah,
perfect.
You can't tattoo Max Payne on your body. I think it's probably
a bit weird. Well, who played the film? Was it Wahlberg?
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. You get a Mark Wahlberg tattoo on your arm.
I'm from Boston. Yeah.
What's your favourite game of the last decade?
I'm gonna have to split it between 2, so forgive me. Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And then Tarkov, I think.
Yeah.
Tarkov made me the man I am today, probably, just because making the game in that genre. I can't stop playing it today. Even played it last weekend, and then Elden Ring just made me. I've always tried to get into From Software games. There's always been something that's hit me, a wall in the game. I'm like, I just can't do it. Like Bloodborne, love the aesthetic, but I could only get halfway. I was like, I'm getting trampled in it. Dark Souls, same thing. Love the aesthetic. I was like, I'm getting trampled halfway through. Demon Souls, the same. But Elden Ring is when I was right through it, just easy going. And if I hit a challenge, I would rise to the occasion. I would do it. So yeah, I got like New Game Plus 3, got like 200 hours in it. DLC came out, great. Like went right through that. So I couldn't help decide whether maybe I was bad at the game or not, but I've heard the DLC is difficult and I've done it, so maybe I'm not so bad. But so Elden Ring and Tarkov were probably the last decade ones. I'd say it's definitely up there.
What was the last game you purchased?
Wukong, Black Myth.
How are you getting on with it?
Just about to start chapter 3, so getting through it.
How many chapters are there in the game?
I'm going to say maybe 6, I'm not sure.
Okay, so about halfway through.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't think it's the longest game ever.
Worth the hype?
Yeah, amazing. I've looked into that studio. I always respect every studio, and if you can get a game out and finish it, that itself is amazing. So Game Science looked into their history, and they've tried to penetrate the market on a few occasions. Like they've actually got 2 previous titles that have the Wukong aesthetic in them. Like they seem to love that because it's a huge Chinese lore. It's inspired like Dragon Ball in Japan as well, and all this kind of stuff. It's a huge thing, So they've been trying to get this game to exist for a while. You can tell when you're playing it, it's a labor of love. It's amazing.
I've downloaded it, but I've not played it yet. It's sat there. I'm still Ghost of Tsushima is killing me at the moment. I'm trying to get through it. We spoke about in previous shows completion rates and how many times we complete games. I don't want to put it down halfway through and jump on something else because I'll just never come back to it. Yeah. And I'll forget what the buttons are and it will drive me mental. So I'm just going to stick with it. And then once I've done it, then I can move on to Wukong. But
were you an Elden Ring player? Did you play Elden Ring?
I didn't, no.
Okay, well, can't talk to you anyway, but...
It was one of those ones that I was very close to getting on several occasions. And we've had conversations about this. It's the time, finding the time to dedicate. And there's so many games that come out that I want to purchase, but I know I'll purchase them, and they're not cheap nowadays, some of these games. And I just won't have the time to play it, and it'll feel like a bit of a waste. I've got probably 30 games sat there that I've not even got halfway through. Yeah, and now I won't ever play them because they're outdated. Yeah. They're not like cult classic games that you will go back and pick up every now and again. They're games that they come out, you play them, you complete them, and you remember them, but you're probably not going to go back and play them. I've got a handful of those that are just there, never going to get played. Like, I'm a superhero guy. Like Guardians of the Galaxy came out, downloaded it immediately. I thought it was actually pretty good. Halfway through, something else caught my attention. Off you go. Yeah. Hogwarts comes out, download it, spend a few hours on it. Something else comes out, sits there. And all these games are costing $70, $80 or whatever it is a pop. And they won't ever get played. They'll just sit there. Luckily, obviously downloaded. They're not collecting dust, but they're digitally collecting dust in my media library. The
catalogue of shame, I think, is what they call it.
Pretty much, yeah.
I've got a bunch. But Elden Ring, I think, will age terrifically, so there's no rush. Yeah. When you got the time, you got the time. I think it's one of those games that will, in 20 years' time, people will be like, oh man, it still plays great and still feels good. People will maybe have a go at its graphics in those days, but people still looking back nowadays like going, I'll go back and play Half-Life 2. The graphics are starting to, more about the character and the vibe rather than necessarily the graphics. So.
There's one game that I will always go back to, and that's always Skyrim. Yeah. I will always go back, start it up. on the cart, going into every time, and I'm like, it's the
You're
same
finally
thing.
awake.
Exactly, yeah. So that's just one of those games that I will always go back to.
Yeah.
And I'll probably create the same character at the start of it again. I'm not even ambitious enough to go into a different mode. But so when you say about, obviously, you've just got Wukong, I'm guessing that's the game that you're currently playing?
That and Tarkov still, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I mean, I reserve Saturday. I do a crunch game Saturday hard. I'll wake up at lunch and I'll go till 5 in the morning. I'll squeeze in because obviously being a developer, it's a double shift type job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just go through the whole day, shut the curtains, go back to Goblin mode like I did when I was 15 or whatever.
Goblin mode,
And
we'll start using that.
Your partner's a gamer as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, speaking of Hogwarts, yeah, she's like smashed that. That's one that she loves that. Skyrim, massive Skyrim fan. Well, technically she's Oblivion, hardcore Oblivion player.
Okay, yeah.
She didn't like Skyrim because it felt too cold.
Yeah.
She likes the sun and it's all like in the... It was quite a funny problem to have with the game, but...
Yeah, I've never really thought of the
yeah, it was like, oh, it feels cool. Where Oblivion's really bright and beautiful. So, but again, the Bethesda catalog has lots of... I'm a Morrowind guy, so like I get it. Like people have their own opinions on all the franchise, and some people are like, nah, that one's the best one, that one's the best one. Some people are like, oh, Fallout only, I won't play the Skyrim or whatever. So, that's fine. Get it. But yeah, she's big into Bethesda's titles for sure.
And what game are you most excited for?
I mean, Doom's coming out. Dark Ages.
I'm familiar, but I'm going to go and check out a trailer after this.
So I've played all the Doom games, obviously Eternal, 100% of that one. But this one I'm really hyped out because it's actually got essence of Quake in it. And this is something my marketing brain's been going at, is like, how would you do Quake again today? Because they did Quake Champions, like an esports game, but it's such a competitive field. Like, it's tough to break out, and even if you got strong IP in the multiplayer space, like, it's tough. So I was like, well, how do you do a single player version of Quake? I was like, well, just use the Doom brand and just have it, just twist the visuals a little bit to be a bit Quake. And that's what Doom the Dark Ages is. Quake was born on medieval aesthetic in space. That's the whole thing. That's Quake. So this new one is Doom in the past. So it has a castle aesthetic. So I'm like, those sneaky guys, they've bloody well merged Quake with Doom for this one. So that's why I'm kind of excited, because I see it as a market opportunity to get Quake back into the limelight. I reckon they're going to have a few nods to Quake in this one. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped for that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, then we've pretty much come to the end of the show. So, been an absolute pleasure having you today, understanding your journey and where you obviously got to and where you are now. And thank you very much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. I could talk all day.
And there we go. That's the end of the show. So, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that one, and we will see you again soon.